When my own flesh and blood son told me, "Dad, you don't deserve a seat at the Christmas table," I felt as if my heart had stopped beating. The reason wasn't that I was poor, nor that I was a stranger. It was because to them I was just an outdated father, an immigrant man who only knew manual labor, cooked a few peasant dishes, and believed in God far too much. That night, I walked out of the brightly lit Kendall Yards mansion, my hands trembling as they clutched the steering wheel, my heart filled with shame. But that humiliation lasted only a few hours. The next morning, when I saw the bank statements of 60 months of transfers, nearly $250,000 I had poured into the house, from which I was now expelled, the shame turned into determination. They had forgotten that I was not just a gentle old father. I was once the man who built an entire career with calloused hands. I knew how to calculate, I knew strategy, and when I made a choice, I carried it through to the end. And so, in the 7 days leading up to Christmas, I began a plan. A plan that would force them to face the truth in front of everyone they wanted to impress. A plan that, step by step, detail by detail, would not only restore my honor and that of Lucia, my late wife, but would also expose their true faces to the whole city. You won't believe what I did next. Before continuing, hit subscribe and tell me in the comments where you're listening from. I'd be deeply grateful. I still remember that night in Denver, blanketed in snow, Christmas lights twinkling on every street, reflected in my eyes, both warm and cold. It should have been a time for family reunion, for me, a father in his 60s, to sit beside my children and grandchildren, recalling memories of my wife, Lucia, the woman who helped me build a home. But instead, I received a shock. A wound carved so deep into my heart that I will never forget it. David, my only son, sat on the expensive Italian sofa in the luxurious living room I had helped build. The thick velvet drapes from Milan, the marble electric fireplace, the long American oak dining table. Every item carried traces of the years of my sacrifice. I remember how many papers I signed, how many times I withdrew from my retirement account to help them build this so-called dream home. Yet in that cozy atmosphere, David uttered words colder than the winter wind. "Dad, this year you're not welcome at Christmas dinner." I froze. For a moment, I thought I had misheard. I sat still on the leather chair, my hand resting on my knee, trembling slightly from the shock. The nearly 13-foot Christmas tree, glittering with lights, stood there as a silent witness to the blow I had just taken. "Why?" I asked, my voice hoarse, caught in my throat. David looked down, his eyes avoiding mine, his lips struggling to form words. "Samantha's family wants to celebrate Christmas their own way. Her parents. They don't feel comfortable if you're present. They want an atmosphere, elegant, fitting their traditions." Each word fell like drops of melting ice, cold and cruel. I looked around the room once more, the drapes, the hardwood floors, the leather couch the young couple was sitting on, all tied to the checks I had signed, the sleepless nights I spent on construction sites chasing extra contracts, the years I cut back on my own expenses. And yet now I was the one unfit to sit at the table. Before I could respond, Samantha, my daughter-in-law, stepped out of the kitchen. She held a glass of wine, smiling politely, but her voice was cold and curt. "Honestly, Mr. Morales, not everyone understands the true spirit of Christmas. Faith requires refinement. At my family's dinner, we want people who can converse about classic literature, about theology, about God with depth, not just stories of manual labor and money." That sentence was like a knife twisting straight into my heart. I was born into a traditional Catholic family. My faith wasn't in fancy words or lofty sermons, but in simple acts, sharing meals, helping neighbors, holding my wife's hand in prayer each night. Lucia used to tell me, "Raphael, God is present in the little things we live each day." Yet now that faith was dismissed, deemed unrefined, not sophisticated enough for a Christmas dinner. I looked straight at Samantha, keeping my voice calm. What did you just say about my faith? She shrugged, took a sip of wine, then replied, light as a breeze, but heavy as a stone. What I mean is, you can keep your simple beliefs, but my parents are used to an intellectual, refined environment. You know, God is great, but the way you express it is a bit vulgar. I could hear my heartbeat pounding, blood rushing hot into my head. For a moment, I thought of Lucia, the woman who prayed for David every night, who dedicated her life to nurturing faith in our family. She now rested in the cold ground, and my daughter-in-law dared to invoke God to belittle her, to belittle me. I stood up, my breathing heavy. David stammered, Dad, please don't make this harder. It's just one evening. Just one evening, I repeated, my voice echoing in the brightly lit room. For you, maybe, but for me, Christmas is when family gathers, when we give thanks to God for having one another. And now I'm stripped of the right to be with my family, in the very house where every brick, every penny is soaked with my sweat. No one answered. Samantha turned away, sipping more wine. David kept his head down, hands clenched, but too weak to defend his father. I saw myself shrinking in the family portraits on the wall. The further they went, the more I was pushed to the edges. I walked to the door, my trembling hand gripping the brass handle. Before opening it, I turned back, looking at my son one last time. David, if you truly want me, absent on Christmas Eve, then say it plainly. Do you choose the Green family or the man who raised you? David stayed silent. That silence was the answer. I gave a faint smile and opened the door. The icy night air rushed in, but it felt more bearable than the coldness inside that house. Merry Christmas to you all, I said, each word like a farewell. May God open your hearts, because clearly you've closed them to your own family. I shut the door behind me, the latch clicking like a final period. Outside, the snow fell heavily, Christmas lights shimmering on the rooftops. I walked away, each step weighed down, but my mind clearer. This would not be a Christmas of tears, but the beginning of a battle for justice. The next evening, as I was sitting in my small house, the only home I had left after countless times of draining my funds to rescue my son, the phone rang. Samantha's name lit up on the screen. My heart tightened. I knew I shouldn't answer, but something compelled me. Perhaps it was the faint hope that, after everything, they might repent. I picked up. Mr. Morales, her voice rang out, cold and controlling. I think we need to clarify things. Don't let a small misunderstanding ruin the Christmas spirit. Misunderstanding? I repeated, struggling to contain my anger. You said I didn't deserve a seat at the family dinner. Was that a misunderstanding? Samantha chuckled softly, the bitter laugh stabbing into me like a knife. Don't be so sensitive. What I meant is, my family has certain standards. They're used to conversations about culture, art, philosophy, about God in a refined way. But you, to be honest, you're just a worker, a middle-tier businessman. What can you talk about besides money and construction? What could you possibly contribute at a formal table? I went silent for a few seconds, gripping the phone in my hand. Images of long years of hard work flashed in my mind. My bleeding hands in youth, sleepless nights signing contracts to raise my son, the times Lucia brought me a bowl of hot soup when I came home late. And in my daughter-in-law's eyes, all of that was nothing more than middle tier, low class. But she wasn't finished. Samantha lowered her voice, almost whispering, but each word struck like a hammer. Even your faith, it doesn't fit. My parents have been in the church for more than 40 years, and they've attended major theological conferences. They believe faith isn't just praying or singing hymns. It requires intellect, scholarship. Do you think you can discuss St. Augustine or Thomas Aquinas? Or do you just read a few simple Bible verses each night? My blood boiled. Never had I endured such venomous contempt. They didn't just belittle my work. They trampled on my faith. the very thing that carried me after losing Lucia. I believe God is present in how we live with one another, I answered, my voice trembling but firm in how we love, sacrifice, and forgive. I don't need to prove it with lofty debates. And Lucia, my wife, lived her whole life that way. She was the embodiment of simple, enduring faith. There was a brief silence on the other end. Then Samantha laughed coldly. Lucia? At least she knew how to stay quiet, how to keep her place. Unlike you, always insisting on forcing your way into places you don't belong. I shot up to my feet, gripping so hard my knuckles cracked. Lucia, the woman who sacrificed her life, endured meager wages to put David through college, stayed awake tending me when I was sick, prayed for our family until her final breath, reduced to nothing but a woman who knew her place. Enough, Samantha, I cut her off. You've said too much. I have nothing more to hear. I slammed the phone down, gasping as if I had run a marathon. In the silence of my room, I stared at my desk, piled high with bank envelopes, statements I had never dared add up. I pulled out a stack, the numbers cutting into my mind like a blade. $3,100 each month. 60 months. A total of $186,000. Not including the roof repair, $12,000. The Italian granite kitchen, $22,000. The sofa set is $18,500. Extra MBA tuition for David, $47,000. The total, nearly $240,000. Nearly all of my savings and Lucia's life insurance. I laughed, a dry, hollow laugh. For 5 years, I had turned myself into an interest-free bank, a milk cow for them to drain. And in return, I was deemed low class, my faith dismissed as unsophisticated, my wife insulted as someone who knew her place. The shame and rage boiled together inside me. That night, I barely slept. I sat in the living room, the yellow lamp casting its glow over the bank papers, highlighting every red number. I knew what I had to do. I don't remember when I fell asleep. All I knew was that when I opened my eyes, the gray winter morning light seeped through the curtains, casting cold streaks across the old wall. Denver at the end of December was brutal. Even my breath turned into white smoke. I sat up, my neck heavy, eyes aching as if I'd been beaten. On the dining table lay the stack of papers from the night before, scribbled with red numbers, stabbing my eyes like knives. I pulled up a chair and sat down. Before me was a final figure I had underlined in blue ink, $237,468. That number loomed like a wall, not only separating me from peace, but exposing the blind foolishness of a father who loved too much. Every number carried a memory, $3,100 every month, ticking like a clock. Those evenings when I sat in my tiny living room, staring at the online statement, clicking transfer without daring to breathe. $12,000 for David's roof when a storm hit. I remember that very night, my own roof leaked above my bed, yet I called workers to fix it first. $22,000 for the Italian granite kitchen Samantha insisted on having to host elegant dinners. I thought maybe my son would be happier if his wife were satisfied. $47,000 for David's MBA program, which he abandoned after one semester, claiming it didn't fit his direction. I even remembered selling my Rolex watch, the gift Lucia had saved 3 years to buy me for our 25th wedding anniversary. I sold it to a second-hand shop, got barely half of its value. I told myself, as long as David is okay, the watch is just a thing. But now, each time I think of it, I feel as though I betrayed Lucia. Besides the bank statements, I kept an old envelope. Inside was Lucia's final letter, written before cancer took her. Her slanted, gentle handwriting read, Raphael, don't let our son forget us. Don't let him think love is only money. If I am gone, keep your faith and guide him with your strength. I placed the letter next to the bank papers, tears streaming. Lucia had been clear, yet I still kept funneling money, like a machine that never stopped. I sacrificed everything only to be repaid with insults, that my faith was lowly, that Lucia was just a woman who knew her place. A sob escaped my throat. But then a clarity I had never felt before surged within me. I knew what I had to do. I lifted the landline, my hand trembling slightly, but my voice firm as the bank operator answered. "Hello, this is Rafael Morales. I want to cancel the automatic transfer from my account to number 7429, the $3,100 each month." On the other end, a polite young female voice replied, "Yes, sir. Let me check. Yes, I see this automatic transfer was set up in 2018. Are you certain you want to cancel immediately?" I looked around my house. The peeling walls, the flickering light. The old coal fireplace is crackling. A poor home, but mine, the one thing no one could take if I didn't hand it away. I heard my own voice ring out, clear and steady. "Yes, cancel it immediately. Effective today. Yes, sir, the order is canceled. Starting next month, there will be no deductions. Wishing you a peaceful day." Peaceful, I repeated softly with a bitter smile. But truly I felt lighter, as though a stone had been lifted from my chest. I set the phone down and sat still for a few minutes. Then, as if compelled, I gathered all the papers, statements, bills, contracts, into a pile in front of the fireplace. The flames leapt, devouring each sheet. The $3,100 burned into ash, rising through the chimney. The crackling fire blended with the howling wind outside, like a hymn of release. I watched the flames dance, and in them I saw Lucia's face. She was smiling gently, her eyes shining as if to say, "That's right, Raphael, it's time." I poured myself a glass of whiskey, the bottle I had saved for a special occasion but never opened. I sat in the armchair, lifted the glass toward our wedding photo on the shelf. "Merry Christmas, Lucia. Merry Christmas to me." The fiery drink burned down my throat, leaving heat in its wake. But in my heart, for the first time in years, I felt true warmth. Not the warmth of sitting in my son's luxurious home, but the warmth of freedom. I knew this was only the first strike. The storm was yet to come. But at least I had stood up, pulled back the hand I had extended for too long, and from that moment on I swore to myself, no one would ever again trample me, trample Lucia's memory, or trample my faith. On the second day after I stopped the transfer order, the phone rang. The screen lit up with the very name that, by just thinking of it, made the blood rush to my temples. Samantha. I hesitated for a second, then picked up. Her voice rang out with the same commanding authorities that had so many times turned me into an unpaid servant. "Raphael, my parents are arriving in Denver this afternoon. Alaska Air Flight 447, Carousel number 3. You pick them up, and dress properly. Don't let them think my family lacks class." I almost laughed, but held it in. My voice stayed calm. "Leave it to me." Samantha didn't bother with thanks, only added curtly, 4 o'clock sharp. They don't like waiting. You know that." Hanging up, I glanced at the wall clock, just past 10 in the morning. Outside, snow still covered Denver's streets, and the wind was lashing against the windows. In my mind, I pictured Charles and Victoria Green, the ones who once sneered at me, standing stranded at the airport, bags piled high, scanning the crowd for a free driver. The more I imagined it, the more amusing it felt. At 4 o'clock, when their flight landed, I wasn't at the airport. I was sitting in my worn armchair, sipping hot tea. On the table lay yesterday's newspaper with the weather line. Temperature 52 degrees Fahrenheit. Clear skies. Perfect. No storm but the storm of pride they were about to suffer. By 6 that evening, a violent pounding rattled my door. Not knocking, pounding as if to break it down. I calmly set my cup aside and walked over. Through the peephole, 3 figures appeared. Charles red-faced, Victoria's hair disheveled, Samantha's makeup smeared by sweat and rage. I opened the door. They barged in without greeting. Charles growled, jabbing a finger at my chest. Do you know we waited more than 3 hours at the airport? Were you trying to humiliate us? Victoria hissed, her voice sharp as a blade. Shameless. A man who claims to believe in God, leaving the elderly in the cold? God will judge you, Raphael. I quietly shut the door behind them, blocking the way into the living room. Looking straight into their eyes, I spoke slowly and clearly. This is my house, and I'll say it one last time. You are not allowed in. Samantha froze, stunned. Never had she heard me speak like that. I held the door open, gesturing toward the falling snow outside. Get out! From now on, I am not your servant, not your bank, and not your chauffeur. This is Christmas, and this is the first time I am free. Charles roared, face purple with rage. You'll pay for this. I have friends, connections. I'll make sure all of Denver knows you as ungrateful, insane. Do you think you can stand against us? I stayed calm, even smiling slightly. Do it. But remember this. God sees everything. Victoria lifted her chin, spitting another insult. You dare invoke God. Your faith is nothing but an excuse for weakness. If Lucia were alive, she would be ashamed of you. For half a second, her words froze me. To mention Lucia, the woman who gave her life for this family, in that tone was the last straw. I stepped forward, my gaze burning through their arrogance. Never speak my wife's name like that again. She had more dignity in a single breath than your entire family has in a lifetime. Samantha trembled, lips pressed tight. Charles stepped back, his face still red, but his body hesitant. I held the door wide, my voice cold as steel. Leave. Now. They stumbled into the snow, throwing threats over their shoulders. You'll regret this, Raphael. We have power. We'll make the whole city see you as unstable, a traitor, a man without faith. The door closed, the lock clicking like a victory drum. I leaned against it, heart pounding, but a strange lightness in my chest. In that small house, for the first time in years, I felt in control. They thought they could threaten, smear, and drag society against me. But they didn't know. Their arrogance had just opened the door to a battle I would not lose. I returned to my chair, lifted the now cold tea. Outside, snow fell steadily. I whispered as if to Lucia, Do you see? I've begun. 3 days after the standoff at my house, things escalated. That morning, as I sipped hot black coffee in my freshly painted kitchen, a bold headline on page 3 of the Denver Herald made my heart race. Elderly businessman abandons aristocratic couple at airport during snowstorm. Beneath the title was an old photo of me, pulled from my construction company's website, weary face, graying hair, dark eyes. The article painted me as unstable, irresponsible, and devoid of humanity. Charles and Victoria Green appeared as helpless victims. We were left for more than 4 hours in the cold, under storm warnings. At our age, it was dangerous. We've never been treated it so cruelly. I let out a dry laugh. Snowstorm? That day, the temperature was 52 degrees with sunny skies. But truth mattered little when tragedy sold papers. The article even cited anonymous sources claiming I was increasingly erratic, that I caused disturbances at church, that I was financially incompetent, and blaming my children. Each line slapped my face, not only smearing my name, but attacking my faith and private life. I set down the coffee, my hands trembling, but my eyes sharp. Once I would have only felt pain, swallowed it. Now I felt a clarity sharper than ever. They had declared open war, and I, Rafael Morales, would not lose. I pulled open the drawer and lifted my laptop. On the screen, records, statements, and every detail lit up. 5 years of steady transfers, $3,100 each month, totaling $186,000. Add the abandoned MBA, the Italian granite kitchen, the roof, the sofa, all with dates and receipts. I arranged everything into a timeline. 2018, mortgage loan to help David buy a house. $47,000 down payment. 2019, roof repair, $12,000. 2020, Italian granite, $22,000. 2021, MBA, $47,000. 2022 through 2023, 60 monthly transfers, $186,000. Total, more than $237,000. I printed it all, marked in red, and underlined every figure. On each page, I scrawled a single word, truth. But it wasn't enough. I searched Samantha's social media. Within hours, I downloaded dozens of photos. Her flaunting a new diamond necklace, Michael proudly showing off the Italian granite kitchen, Charles laughing in a walnut-paneled living room, Victoria holding French wine at a party. Every picture taken inside the house that my money had built. Looking at those images, I felt a sweet irony. If the press wanted to tell a story of a neglectful father, then I would give them the opposite. A father exploited, scorned, and slandered. And my evidence wasn't words, but ink on paper and photos they had posted themselves. That night, I sat at my desk, the lamp shining over a stack of documents thick as a court file. I called it the Justice Dossier. The next morning, I contacted an old friend, Melissa Carter, a freelance journalist who had written many investigations exposing abuse of power in Denver. When I handed her the dossier, Melissa's eyes lit up. "Oh my God, Raphael, this isn't just a family story. This is an entire portrait of abuse, of a social class trampling working people. Are you ready to make it all public?" I looked at Lucia's picture on my phone. She was smiling gently in our wedding photo. I whispered, "For you, I will." "I am ready," I answered. Melissa nodded. "Good. But for maximum impact, you need more than the press. You need a public stage, right in front of the ones who mocked you, a place they cannot escape." Suddenly I remembered the Christmas party Samantha bragged about on Facebook. 12 guests, family, friends, neighbors. An occasion they surely wanted to flaunt. A perfect night for the truth to explode. The thought gave me goosebumps. I knew the biggest battle was just ahead. That night I prepared 12 dossiers, each thick with bank statements, invoices, social media screenshots, and the newspaper article with my notes. I bound each one, neat and secure. Every guest at the party would get a copy. Each copy was a bomb. As I slid the dossiers into my leather briefcase, I heard Lucia's voice as if whispering in my ear, "Don't tremble, Raphael. Justice doesn't need to shout. It only needs the truth at the right moment." I closed the case, setting it beside my dark blue suit, the one I had worn at Lucia's funeral. This time I would wear it not to bury, but to declare the era of weak Raphael was over. That Christmas Eve, Denver's sky was unusually clear. Strings of lights shimmered across houses, as if the whole world lived in sweetness and ease. But for me, this was not a night of peace and carols. This was the night of truth. I put on the dark blue suit, tightened my tie, and polished my shoes, shining under the streetlights. On the passenger seat of my old pickup lay the leather case, 12 thick dossiers stacked inside. I drove down Kendall Yards, where David and Samantha's mansion glowed like a palace. Cars lined the street. Through the window, I saw candles, sparkling glasses, and laughter echoing. I stopped, inhaled deeply. "Lucia, if you are watching, give me strength." The front door opened easily. Of course, Samantha always believed that in such a wealthy neighborhood, no one dared intrude. I walked straight in, carrying winter's chill, and the room's chatter froze. 12 faces turned to me. Charles and Victoria Green stared as if seeing a ghost. Samantha gasped, spilling wine across the white tablecloth. David sat frozen, his face pale. I stood at the dining room entrance, my deep voice carrying, "Merry Christmas. I know I wasn't invited, but I brought gifts. The gift is truth." A murmur swept through the room. I placed the leather case on the buffet beside the table, opened it, and drew out dossier after dossier, papers, bank statements, color photos. I handed them one by one to the guests, their eyes filled with curiosity. Inside, I said clearly, are 5 years of transfers. $186,000 in mortgages, totaling more than $237,000, not including countless extras. Every house, the Italian granite kitchen, even the glass in your hand, bears my money. Money they call self-made. You think they built wealth by merit? Read carefully. A silver-haired man, perhaps a business partner of Charles, frowned as he flipped through. A woman with pearls covered her mouth, astonished. The air grew heavy. Samantha stammered, "This is family business. He's raving. He gave willingly. We never forced him." I held up the newspaper, the slanderous article they had planted. "And what about this? Charles Green, you called the reporter, staged the scene of me abandoning an elderly couple in a snowstorm. Anyone here can check. That day was 52 degrees, bright sun. The only storm was your storm of lies." All eyes turned on Charles. His face flushed, mouth stumbling. One stern guest asked outright, "Charles, is this true?" Charles flailed. He's deranged. He acts erratically, obsessed with religion." I cut in, my voice like steel. "Yes, they called me obsessed with God, said my faith was a joke. They said Lucia, my wife, was just someone who knew her place. You want to hear how I go to church? I prayed every night for my son, while he sat here letting his wife and in-laws humiliate his father, smear his mother's memory." The murmurs grew louder, outrage rising. An older woman stood, throwing her dossier on the table. "Shameful! You exploited him, then slandered him in public? Samantha, child, you have disgraced your whole lineage." Samantha turned pale. David opened his mouth, but I locked eyes with him. "Son, for years I sent you nearly $250,000, and you repaid me by casting me from the Christmas table. Do you call that family?" David trembled, stammering, I didn't know." "Exactly," I said. "You never knew. You never asked if your father could live, if he had a hot meal. You only held out your hand while I carried the burden. And when I stopped, you, your wife, and her parents turned your knives on me." Silence gripped the room. Guests stared at the dossiers, shaking their heads, whispering. The lies of the false article dissolved. I closed the case and straightened my tie. "That is my Christmas gift to you. Truth. Remember it as you leave tonight. Every meal, every glass, every decoration in this house, you owe to my lonely sacrifice. But from now on, not a penny more." I turned. Behind me, chaos erupted. Shouting, accusations, Victoria sobbing, Charles bellowing uselessly, and through it, I heard a quiet voice. "God bless you, Raphael. You did right." I stepped out, the door closing behind, cold wind slapping my face, but my heart burning warm. Never had Christmas tasted so sweet. Winter dragged on. Snow covered Denver, but for the first time in years, warmth filled me. After that night, the truth spread faster than any newspaper. What I revealed before 12 witnesses flamed through the community. Charles and Victoria Green were no longer admired. Friends distanced themselves. Club invitations vanished, and charity galas excluded them. Samantha drew whispers everywhere, and David, my son, remained silent for weeks. But the bank was not silent. In March, I received a letter, a foreclosure notice. For 3 straight months, David and Samantha had defaulted. Remaining balance, $9,300. 14 days to pay, or the Kendall Yards mansion, the pride, the showpiece, the altar of arrogance, would be auctioned. I sipped coffee and set the letter aside, no longer my concern. That evening David came, hollow face, expensive suit wrinkled, eyes sunken. I opened the door to the son I had carried all my life. His voice cracked. "Dad, I need to talk." I let him in. He looked around my small house, seeing for the first time everything repaired. New paint, new sofa, bright kitchen, all made possible by no longer feeding their greed. Beautiful, he whispered. I replied curtly, "This is what happens when you spend for yourself, not for others to waste." He sat, burying his head in his hands. "I'm sorry. I know I was wrong. Christmas, the article, all of it, I should have stood with you. But I was weak. I let them control me." I waited. The bank sent notice. "We're losing the house." Samantha's furious. Her parents blame me. I don't know what to do. "Dad, will you help me this time? One last time?" The question hung like a blade turned inward. I met his eyes. "Do you know how much I gave you in total?" "About over 200,000. 237,468. I know each dollar." I sat and counted. "Do you think I will continue? After all this?" Tears streaming, David shook. "Dad, if I lose the house, Samantha will leave me. I've lost everything. Lost you. Lost Mom. Now losing family. I can't take it." My chest ached. He was still my blood. But I remembered Christmas night, the insults to God, to Lazia. I sighed. "Son, you never lost your father. You gave me away. You weren't robbed. You handed me over." He sobbed. "Is there any way I can make it right?" "To start again?" I nodded slowly. "Yes, but not with money, not with hollow apologies. If you want your father back, you rebuild brick by brick. Respect, truth, faith. Prove it with action, and never again let anyone, even your wife, trample your father." He nodded, tears falling, but I knew. This was only a beginning. His path would be long. Months later, I stood at the county courthouse auction. The Kendall Yards house where I was scorned, now reduced to words on a clerk's list. 4 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, walnut floors, Italian granite kitchen. Opening bid, 290,000. Charles and Victoria are absent. Samantha sobbing. David froze, hands shaking as the bids rose. I stood apart, silent. When the gavel fell, sold for 317,000. I saw David's shoulders collapse. Broken. Kendall Yards was no longer theirs. It would belong to another family, perhaps one that cherished simple joy. I turned away, not triumphant, but with justice done. 1 year later, I visited Riverside Cemetery. In my hands, white chrysanthemums, Lucia's favorite. At her grave, I spoke. "Lucia, rest easy." I finished it. "I did not let them shame you. All is clear now. David, he's trying to change. I don't know if he can, but at least he bows to the truth. And I've found peace." I laid the flowers down, stood, breathed deep. No more hatred, only calm. That afternoon I went to the little church on the corner. Hymns rose, candles glowed. I sat among ordinary people, none rich or powerful, but all with kindness in their eyes. I saw Lucia in their smiles. Stepping outside, Denver's spring breeze carried warmth. I knew a chapter had closed. I had learned one thing. Family is not blood, but respect. My son may share my blood, but when he surrendered me to contempt, he lost me. Yet in that loss, I found myself. I found God. I found freedom. This story is not revenge. It is justice. A reminder that those who sow arrogance and betrayal reap loneliness and loss, and those who stand, who say no at the right moment, find peace. That Christmas, I was not in Kendall Yards. I was in my small kitchen, sipping cheap wine, but my heart was warm as never before. And I whispered, as if to Lucia, "My love, at last I did right. You can be proud of me. If you like this story, please like the video, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. To hear the next story, click the box on the left. Thank you for listening."